Wife, look me in the eye and tell me, what are you saying? Our Pip is the blood of that high and mighty Lord Alden? What kind of cursed madness is this? It was the dead of night, in the poorest, muddiest corner of the kingdom, inside a miserable thatched cottage where the most destitute gathered. Beneath the pitch-black sky, in a room where only a single worn tallow candle flickered dangerously, the tearing voice of the rugged laborer, Bram, rang out. His eyes were bloodshot, looking as though they might burst from his skull, and his two hands, gripping the hem of his rough wool tunic, were trembling without mercy. Kneeling before him, his wife, Bess, had her face completely covered in tears, unable to even lift her head. Barely parting her lips, a cruel truth flowed from her mouth, shattering Bram's heart. Husband, I have committed a mortal sin. All my life I meant to take this secret to my grave, especially from you, but the heavens are merciless. Today, Lord Alden saw our Pip on the market road. What are we to do? Just outside the room, their 10-year-old son, Pip, knowing absolutely nothing of this, had fallen into a deep sleep after a hard day, breathing softly. But inside the room, a hellish silence hung in the air, as if a bolt of lightning had struck from a clear blue sky. What kind of terrifying secret could possibly be hidden in the home of this poor, ordinary peasant laborer? The story goes back exactly 10 years from this night. At that time, the household of Lord Alden, a powerful nobleman from a lineage that had served the king for 3 generations, harbored a grave anxiety. He possessed wealth, power, and honor, everything the world had to offer. But he lacked the one thing that mattered most: an heir to carry on the family name. Lord Alden's legal wife, Lady Maud, had tried every endeavor and drank every costly tonic brewed by monk healers, yet she remained barren. The pressure from the noble house upon a wife who could not bear a child grew heavier by the day. In the end, weeping tears of blood, Lady Maud suggested to her husband that they bring in a surrogate maid. The young woman, who secretly entered the manor hall disguised as a seamstress, was none other than Bram's current wife, Bess. To feed her starving family and to pay for rare medicine for her sick parents, Bess walked into the deep shadows of the Lord's estate, offering her own body like a sacrifice. Lord Alden took the young and beautiful Bess to his bed, and before long, as if by magic, Bess's belly began to swell. The entire manor should have rejoiced at such blessed news, but the ways of the world are rarely so kind. The jealousy and spite of Lady Maud, poisoned by her own barrenness, was beyond imagination. She feared that the moment Bess gave birth to a son, her own standing as the lady of the house would be completely destroyed. And so, even before the child was born, she hired men to quietly murder Bess and steal the infant away. A loyal servant, catching wind of this dark plot, took Bess by the hand in the dead of night and fled through the servants' gate. Heavy with child, Bess was cast out, forced to wander the muddy streets and dark alleys of the kingdom. Her belly was as large as a boulder. She had nowhere to go, and every day was a nightmare of terror. Feeling the breath of the manor guards sent by the estate closing in on her neck. One night, amidst the biting cold of a winter famine, Bess collapsed in the corner of a snow-covered alleyway, groaning in agony. As she was losing consciousness to the bitter frost and starvation, a man appeared before her eyes. It was Bram, a massive, rugged laborer who was then still a bachelor. Why is a woman with child lying out here in this freezing cold? Please, wake up. Can you hear me? Bram was a rough and unpolished man, but his heart was as gentle as fine linen. Unable to simply walk past a freezing, pregnant woman, Bram scooped her up in his strong arms and carried her back to his single-room timber cottage. He spared none of his precious firewood, warming the hearth, and boiled thin barley soup, nursing her back to health with the utmost devotion. Thanks to him, Bess survived, and right there in Bram's small cottage, she gave birth to a tiny, blood-covered baby boy. That boy was none other than Pip. Bess confessed the entire truth to Bram, the man who had saved her life and delivered her child. She told him that she had been a surrogate for a noble lord, and that she was now a hunted woman, chased from the estate. It was a cursed tale, the kind that could cost a man 10 lives if he got tangled up in it. An ordinary man would have been terrified and thrown her out onto the street immediately. But Bram was different. The moment the newborn Pip's tiny, squirming fingers tightly grasped his rough, calloused hand, something burning hot surged up from the very depths of Bram's chest. "I may be nothing but a penniless laborer," he told her. "But now that you have entered my home, no one will ever lay a finger on you or this child. From this day forth, I will be this boy's father. So fear nothing and stay here with me." And so, as a bachelor, Bram took in a woman bearing another man's child as his wife, and he raised Pip with more fierce, protective love than if the boy were his own flesh and blood. Even when his shoulders bled from hauling heavy wooden carts and his bones ached in every joint, coming home at night to see Pip's smile melted away all the sorrows of the world. Is it not said that the bond of raising a child is stronger than the bond of blood? To Bram, Pip was his everything, the one soul he would gladly trade his own life for. As 10 years passed in this manner, the pursuit from the Lord's estate faded away, and it seemed the happiness of this small family would last forever. But the jest of the heavens was truly cruel. Just earlier today, a fateful event occurred in the muddy market square. On this particular day, Pip was helping inside the parish church near where his father worked, secretly learning his letters from a kind old priest who taught him quietly. Just then, a grand carriage passing by the church happened to stop. The carriage door opened, and the imposing, dignified figure of Lord Alden looked outside. Lord Alden was well past 40, yet still had no heir. Every night he stayed awake sighing, ashamed to face the memory of his ancestors in the candlelit chapel. But then his gaze stopped upon Pip, who was leaning against the stone wall, tracing letters in the dirt with a twig. In that instant, Lord Alden felt a shock that nearly stopped his heart. The boy was wearing dirt-stained wool clothes from the market, but his features, the unique shape of his eyes, and even the habit of lightly biting his lower lip when deep in thought, it was exactly like looking into a mirror at his own youth. No, it was beyond mere resemblance. Anyone with eyes could see the boy was the spitting image of Lord Alden. The old saying that a man's seed cannot be stolen or hidden rings true. The noble bloodline of a great lord could not be concealed, shining through even in the filth of a peasant market. Lord Alden hastily stepped down from his carriage and approached Pip. "Child, what is your name? How many winters have you seen? And where does your father work?" Overwhelmed by the noble lord's presence, Pip answered, full of fear. "I am called Pip, and I am 10 years old. My father is Bram, the laborer who hauls carts over there in the market square." The moment he heard that Pip was 10 years old, the face of Bess, the surrogate maid who had vanished without a trace 10 years ago, flashed through Lord Alden's mind. The age matched perfectly, and the face was an undeniable copy. There was no room for doubt. The bastard he sought to legitimize to save his lineage was being raised like a street hound by a lowly laborer. Lord Alden immediately ordered his manor guards to investigate the boy's origins, and ultimately, he uncovered the truth. The boy's mother was Bess, the woman who had fled his estate all those years ago. And that evening, through the village gossip in the market square, Bess heard the devastating news that the Lord's estate had taken an interest in Pip and had men asking questions about him. Thus, the moment her husband Bram returned from his grueling labor, she had no choice but to tear open this hidden box of dark secrets. Back in the dark, cramped cottage in the present, Bram, having heard the entire tale, gritted his teeth so hard they nearly cracked. Thick drops of tears fell one by one down his weathered face. "So you mean to tell me that our Pip, the boy I have raised for 10 years, by bleeding myself dry and grinding my bones to dust, is the bastard son of that high lord's estate?" "Husband, I am sorry. I am so truly sorry. But never for a single moment have I thought of Pip as that house's child. Pip's father is you, and only you." Bess begged, clutching the hem of Bram's trousers. But Bram's heart was already shredded into pieces. The despair of seeing 10 years of built-up happiness collapse like a castle of sand in a single moment washed over him. To think that the son he loved so dearly was the seed of a nobleman. It was right at that moment. Through the crack of the open door, along with a piercing night wind, a small shadow fell upon the floor. "Father, Mother, what are you two talking about? I am not my father's son?" Waking up from his sleep at some unknown hour, Pip had opened the door and was staring into the room. The 10-year-old child had heard every word of the shattering truth. That the father who had loved him more than anyone in the world for 10 years was not his real father. Tears streamed down from Pip's large, innocent eyes. "Pip!" Bess cried out, reaching to embrace the child, but Pip took a step backward, keeping his eyes fixed entirely on Bram. "Father, I am your son, aren't I? The man who hauls carts and strokes my hair every night before I sleep? You are my father, right? Please, Father, say something." At his son's desperate cry, Bram felt an agony that threatened to rip his heart apart. Just because they did not share blood, did that mean this boy was not his son? The nights he carried the feverish child on his back, running miles through the dark to find an apothecary. The times he managed to get a rare piece of meat, never letting it touch his own lips, but feeding it to his son. Feeling true joy? Were all those memories a lie? With his rough arms, Bram grabbed Pip and pulled him into a fierce embrace. He shouted as if his chest would burst. "You are! Why wouldn't you be my son? No matter what anyone says, you are the son of this foolish Bram, and I am your father. Do not worry, Pip. As long as there is breath in my lungs and sight in my eyes, no man will ever tear you from my arms." The family of three held each other tightly, weeping together until the dawn broke. In a kingdom where the wall between commoner and noble was absolute, a humble laborer was claiming the blood of a powerful lord. The cruel vortex of fate was only just beginning to spin. And the very next morning, outside the wretched thatched cottage in the slums, dozens of manor guards and a gleaming carriage blocked the muddy lane. At last, Lord Alden had arrived in person, leading his men to reclaim his blood. The villagers held their breath, watching the scene unfold as if a great war had come to their doorsteps. Stepping down from his carriage, Lord Alden strode into the small yard with an arrogant gait and shouted coldly, "You lowly peasants inside, bring my son out to me at once! To dare keep the bastard son of a noble house locked away in a pigsty like this, I shall see you answer for your crimes." The moment they dreaded had finally arrived. Facing the chilling, drawn blades of a noble house armed with absolute power and gold, the poor laborer Bram had to stand his ground with nothing but his bare hands and a father's love. Could Bram truly withstand this massive storm of fate? "My lord, though you sever my head and spill my blood upon this very mud, I shall never surrender my son. This boy is my son, even unto the gates of heaven, and your noble house shares not a single drop of the life we have built together." The tension in the small yard reached a breaking point. The lordly estate guards, armed with heavy wooden cudgels, completely surrounded the family. The poor laborer Bram gripped a sharp woodcutter axe, shielding his wife Bess and his son Pip behind his broad, weary back. His eyes were bloodshot, and his voice thundered across the muddy market square like a sudden winter storm. Lord Alden's face twisted with a terrifying wrath at the sight of a mere commoner daring to block his path with such venom. "This wretched peasant has lost his wits! How dare you raise an axe before your lord? Men, strike this dog down and throw my son into the carriage!" At Lord Alden's fierce command, a dozen burly manor guards rushed forward, descending upon Bram like a pack of wild hounds. The sickening thuds of heavy wood striking flesh echoed through the damp air. Bram took the brutal blows from the guards' cudgels with his bare body, fighting desperately to stay on his feet. His shoulder cracked under the force, and dark crimson blood poured from his head, blinding his eyes. Yet Bram did not take a single step back. His only thought was that if he fell into the mud today, his innocent child would be forced to live out his days suffocating in the cold. Unforgiving stone halls of a noble estate. "Father, father, my lord, please, I beg of you, cease striking my father. I will go to your manor hall. Just please spare my father's life." Seeing his father battered and bleeding, 10-year-old Pip threw himself forward, weeping bitterly as he tried to block the guards. The boy wrapped his small arms around Bram's wounded body, pleading with Lord Alden through a veil of tears. Watching this heartbreaking scene, The poor villagers of the muddy lanes began to wipe their own eyes, muttering dark curses and casting hostile glares at the cruelty of the high-born lord. Lord Alden felt a strange, sickening mixture of shame and fury as he watched his own flesh and blood sob over a lowly laborer, calling him father. "You foolish boy! That base-born peasant is no father of yours. In your veins flows the high-born blood of a powerful lineage, a family of great lords and knights. How can you weep for a mere beast of burden?" Roaring with anger, Lord Alden stepped forward and violently seized Pip's wrist, pulling him away. It was in that exact moment that Bess moved. Seeing her husband's blood mingling with the mud and her son's desperate tears, her eyes turned as cold as winter frost. She stepped directly into Lord Alden's path and drew a hidden iron dagger from the folds of her wool dress, pressing the sharp blade firmly against her own throat. "My lord, do you truly wish to claim your bloodline? If you take one more step, I shall expose the wicked sins your legal wife, Lady Maud, committed 10 winters past. I will scream it across every parish and castle road in this realm, and then I shall end my life upon this very soil." "What madness is this? You low-born woman! Whom do you dare threaten?" "Where were you, my lord, when Lady Maud sent her assassins to murder me in the dark?" "You noblemen are all the same, using a poor maid to bear your heir, and turning a blind eye when my life was forfeit." "When I was freezing to death on the winter roads, heavy with child, the only one who saved me, the only one who raised this babe from a swaddling infant, is my husband Bram, who stands bleeding before you. If you take this boy now by force, the good priest will inform the king's spies and the holy bishop to expose the dark, murderous secrets of your manor hall, and then I will take my own life. Let us see if the king still spares your noble lands when the church reveals your deeply foul deeds." At Bess's fierce, desperate ultimatum, Lord Alden's face turned as pale as a ghost. For a noble house that valued its honor and standing above life itself, the revelation of a secret surrogacy and his legal wife's attempted murder would bring absolute ruin. The church's wrath would fall upon them, and the king would seize their lands forever. Furthermore, the eyes of the peasants gathered around the yard were growing increasingly hostile, their murmurs turning into angry growls. Lord Alden trembled with rage, yet he was completely overwhelmed by Bess's unyielding resolve and Bram's sheer willingness to die for the boy. But most of all, as he looked down, he met Pip's fierce, tear-filled eyes. In that gaze, Lord Alden read an absolute rejection. "You are not my father, even if he dragged the boy back to his grand estate by force. The child's true father, in his heart, would forever remain this battered laborer." After a long, heavy silence, Lord Alden let out a deep, bitter sigh. His grip loosened, and he slowly let go of Pip's hand. "All my life I cursed the heavens for denying me an heir. But today I see it as God's punishment upon me. I never knew the price of abandoning my own blood would be this bitter." Lord Alden turned away. His shoulders slumped in defeat, and climbed back into his carriage. "Move out. We shall never return to this place." As the Lord's men withdrew down the castle road, retreating like shadows fleeing the dawn. The suffocating tension finally broke. Bram collapsed heavily into the mud. Though his body was broken and covered in blood, his very first act was to pull Pip tightly against his chest. "Pip, my boy. Pip, are you unharmed? Your father. Thank you, Father. Please do not ever leave me." Pip buried his face in Bram's chest, sobbing uncontrollably, while Bess dropped her dagger and wrapped her arms around them both, her tears mingling with theirs in the damp earth. Though they shared not a single drop of noble blood and had suffered bone-breaking agony, the true love of their family had completely shattered the massive, terrifying walls of power and high-born lineage. True to his word, Lord Alden never sought them out again. He lived out his remaining days in a cold, silent manner, and without an heir, his powerful noble house eventually fell into ruin, and its gates were closed forever. Meanwhile, Bram's family lived happily in their humble thatched cottage. Using the silver pennies Bram earned from his back-breaking labor, Pip was sent to the old priest to learn his letters. In the years that followed, Pip overcame the boundaries of his lowly station, growing into a great, wise, and respected man who honored his parents with all his heart until their dying days. For in the end, what was stronger than the ties of high-born blood was the rough, calloused hand of a peasant father stroking his child's hair by the hearth fire every night. And greater than any noble title in the realm was the fierce, sacrificial love of a humble laborer who risked his very life to protect his son.